I feel like this was been a pretty full podcast, but podcasts are entertainment. They're not education.
Mm-hmm.
And books, especially business books, are fluff more than they are actionable.
Yeah.
And so I'm not a big fan of either. Like if I'm listening to a podcast, it's because I find those people entertaining, not because I think it's super valuable. And so like if I'm listening to podcasts, it's usually not business related. And with books, it's usually not business related. But I do think books are important. So to me, like if you're looking for educational value, you're going to have a better shot with YouTube. One, the videos are going to be more targeted to a specific thing, and the fluff is usually not going to be there. Some creators have it, but most of them don't, because they're trying to get the best watch time possible. So they're trying to keep it concise, or it's just full from start to finish. So you're going to get more out of a 25-minute YouTube video or a 10-minute YouTube video than you will out of a 25-minute podcast, in my opinion. The other thing with that is that if you're interested in a book, you are better off finding an interview of that author or a book summary of that author on YouTube, because then you're going to get the summary. You're going to get all of the best bits, the important part of that book, without the fluff in a 20, 25-minute video. Or you're going to have a 1-hour interview of that person, and they are going to explain all of the concepts in their own words. And you're going to get way more out of it than the book. And so that's why that's why I use YouTube so much. So like if you want to like go through a bunch of books, business books, to learn something, do the interview or do the book summary instead. And then when you find the one that's the most impactful, then read that book and then go all in on that book. Because it's better for you to read a book multiple times and master the concept than to read a bunch of books. Right. And there's a lot in entrepreneurship of people just reading a bunch of books.
Yep.
So you can really shortcut that. Like listen to 10 book summaries, and then the one that you think is going to have the biggest impact, then go all in on the book.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this isn't even really a caveat, but it's just a note to that for myself. And I don't think I'm alone with this, especially if you're talking about a business book or a book about behavior change. Like, as I say this, I'm thinking about Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Yeah.
That's like one of the best books that I've read within the last few years. But I think a lot of that comes down to having the context around those ideas, right? So it's like with Atomic Habits, if somebody were to give me a bulleted list of like, do these things, like I would have sort of like the step-by-step maybe information, but I wouldn't have the context, and I wouldn't know why those things are important. Therefore, I would be less likely to start them or continue with them. So I think sometimes the context that you get from a book can be helpful.
I think though, you have to put James Clear in another category. I think also
that's
have to
fair.
I think guys like him, like Ryan Holiday,
like
Mark Manson, like those guys, you have to put them in another category, because they're writers, and like those, when they put out a book, it is very researched and it isn't fluff. But the majority of business books, people aren't writing them to give a lot of value. They're writing them to sell and to grow their business and to grow their influence. And that is really that's what the culture is right now. And so like you're going to get more value out of a book that was written, let's say 1990 or earlier, like business books, than you are in more recent stuff, because you just don't know which ones are really, really actually good. And so like, I would really be looking for something that has a 4.5 to 5-star average that has 500 to 1,000 or more reviews. But that's like, I totally get what you're saying. And I totally agree about that when you're talking about Atomic Habits, but that was him taking everything that he's ever written and ever learned and studied and putting it into a book. And it's just packed. Right.
Yeah.
But, I can name a lot of books that are not like that. And it's just like, come on, like, can we get, or it's they're teaching the same thing, but it's 10 chapters of different stories and examples where it was like, I read 20 pages and I had the whole book.
You get it. Yeah.
And that's why I mentioned, you know, the videos like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're, yeah, I agree. And that like most new business books are really, they're written so someone can say they've written a book. Right. Yeah. And that reminds me of, I think it's Tim Ferriss. He had this rule for himself that he like, either he wouldn't read any books that came out in the current year, or he would not read a book unless it was like 5 years old or more or something like that.
Still
basically
relevant.
like, yeah, giving it time to sort of like see if it's still relevant after a few years, giving it time to get those like Amazon reviews and ratings and all that. So
yeah.